Hello, this is Ben Brownlee from Boris Effects, and we are going to be looking at how we take a humble push transition and turn it into something a lot more modern using S blur motion curves in DaVinci Resolve. The transition that we use to move between different locations and different times is really important. If we take a look at our timeline here, you can see we're just cutting between the different locations. If you want to add transitions for a better flow, for example for a travel log, then we should consider how we're going to do that. Come to our clips here, adding a simple transition. We could use a basic dissolve if we wanted to. That's one way of easing the viewer between different places. The whole point of the dissolve is to smooth that harsh cut. So obviously it's not going to have that sort of bite or edge to it. Another classic way of doing it is to use a push. If I add a push in here, and we'll take that down to about 12 frames. And we'll just play that back. There we go. I mean, that's got something to it. The default push is always just that. It's just a little push. I mean, we could come in to our inspector, add some feathering, add a bit of a border between these two to try and smooth the edge out a little bit, but you're still left with a basic boring push. If we're using the Sapphire filters and some of the transitions here, we do have a really nice one that's called S Whiplash. And if I bring this over the top, and I'll just change up the duration so we have around about the same sort of time as we had previously, and I'll change the shift over here so we're only getting the equivalent of that push. If we compare that to the original push, that gives us a nice sort of fast way of getting between objects. And I like this one. This is looking pretty good. And we don't have to do a simple push. We could do things like if we come over to our later shot here, and I'll add another whiplash. And take this again to that 12 frame duration, come into my controls. And instead of shifting at all, we can use the scale. We can use the scale to pull out from our image and maybe add in a little bit more motion blur as we need to. We can even add some rotation in there as well. And that's a nice fast way of doing things. Another way of doing this effect, if you really want complete control over it, is to use a different filter. And it's another Sapphire filter, and it's called Sapphire Blur Motion Curves, or S Blur Mo Curves. And I'll come into another timeline and show you how we can use this. And here we are. Now, in preparation for doing this effect, I've actually come in and added some extra edits here. Now, this isn't absolutely necessary, but it is just easier for me when I'm showing you the effect. If we take our first edit, we've got this close-up of a girl running, cutting to a much wider shot of her running as well. Now, I want to do a nice dramatic pull-out on this, and I'm going to use S Blur Mo Curves to do it. So I'm going to apply the effect, and I'm going to come in and look at my controls. And because we're doing a pull out, I wanted to use the Z distance here. So I'm going to make this smaller at the end. So we'll take this to around about 1.3-ish. We don't have to be too exact with this. And I'm going to come down and see how this is going to wrap, because at the moment it's being scaled down, so there's nothing to fill in those black edges. So I'm going to hit reflect on both the X and the Y, just to kind of hide those black edges. And if we just play that through, you see that nothing really looks like it's changed all that much. We've just got a cut and then a cut back out. Now this effect only really comes to life once you start keyframing it. So I'm going to add a single keyframe in the Z distance and come to the start of my clip and take my Z distance back down to 1. This will automatically add another keyframe for us, so we don't have to worry about that. Now as we move forward, we're getting a nice bit of motion blur on top of that zoom out. Our effect is only lasting 6 frames. This type of effect generally works better on shorter transitions anyway. So we've got the outgoing transition now. I'm just going to copy this clip and then right click on the next clip and go paste attributes. And then I'll make sure that the only thing I'm taking over is going to be the plugins. Hit apply on that. And this will then copy my S Blur Motion Curves onto the next clip. Just going to reset the Z distance because I don't need any of those keyframes right this second. And what I'm going to do is just take this down in the opposite direction so that we're zooming in to the incoming clip. Add a keyframe on that. Our wrap is still the same, of course. So I'll come to the end here, end frame is that one. And once again, set our Z distance to 1. So now if we play that back, you can see we get a nice kind of transition starting to appear. There's a few things we can do to make this even better. First thing you'll notice is on the incoming clip, when we start, we actually don't have any motion blur at all. So this is kind of giving a bit of a jolt to the eye. So you're kind of blurring out, coming back into focus, blurring out, coming back into focus again. It's all right, it's not what I want. So what I need to do to make sure that the motion blur is there right from the very first frame is change this value, the shutter shift. And I'm going to change that all the way up to +1. And I'm going to come to the outgoing clip, and I'm going to put my shutter shift all the way to -1. So we're biasing the motion blur in this case. And if we play that back, we get a much smoother transition. Now, of course, I can do other things here as well. I can change up stuff like rotation. I'm going to move this to +3. Add a keyframe. Come to my first frame. Set that to 0. I can add things like brightness as well. So I just set a keyframe on the brightness. And then come to the last frame and tap that up, maybe to about 1.5. Don't need to put this too high. That's it. So we've now added rotation of +3, brightness of 1.5. Come to my incoming clip and do the opposite. And we'll change those same values. So on the brightness, I'll bring that to 1.5, add a keyframe. On the rotation, because we want this to be a continuous movement, if we go +3 on the outgoing clip, we need to go -3 on the incoming clip. -3.1, that'll do. Come over to the last frame and do the same sort of thing. 0, tabbing away through, going to brightness, hitting 1. Now if we play this back, we get a little bit of a curve, a little bit of a brightness bump before it sits back down again. Now if you wanted to manually do this on all of the cuts, you know, that might take a little bit of time. But the nice thing about the Sapphire plugins is that we have presets that we can save out. So if I go save preset here, it's going to open up my preset browser and I can give it a name. For example, this will be zoom out, spin counterclockwise, anti-clockwise, and it is the incoming clip. So I'll go in. Also brightening this up. So I'm going to call this one bright. There we go. And I'm going to remember this naming convention. So I'm going to copy this and just hit save on that. And on this other one, I'll come over, save my preset here, and I'm going to just paste the old name in and go out because it's the outgoing clip. Save that there. So now we can use this again and again and again. If I bring that effect over one more time, come into my open effects, I'm going to load up that preset. And in addition to the default presets that we have for this particular effect, I've actually created a number of different ones which are doing this same kind of transition. Now in this particular instance, I'm going from a wider shot into a tighter shot, so I want to have a zoom in, and I've got those for me right here. Let's just zoom these up a little bit so we can see the full name. And because this is the outgoing clip, I'm going to choose zoom in, spin, clockwise, extreme blur, out for outgoing. I'm going to load that in. That's going to give me my end values. So all I have to do to make this transition work now is keyframe up the values that have changed. So we've got Z distance, rotate. The shutter duration is the thing that controls my motion blur. I don't need to change that here. I will change the brightness up though, and come to our first frame and change these to Z distance to 1, tabbing along, rotate to 0, tab, 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 all the way down till we get to brightness, set that back to 1 again. And now we've got that effect happening. And I can do the same sort of thing on the other side. Load in our other preset, come over to our favorites, and we want to zoom in, spin clockwise, extreme blur, in. So let's load that one, and we do the same thing again. Keyframe the Z distance, keyframe the rotation, and keyframe the brightness. Come to the end. 1, 0 on the rotate, and 1 on the brightness. Play that back. And we've got a much cooler, more modern push style of effect using S-Blur motion curves. Now I've included a link to all of these presets down at the bottom, so if you do want to use them, then all you have to do is go load preset, and then come up to File and Import Presets in the Sapphire preset browser. You will need Sapphire 2019.5 or above to load these presets in, but obviously there's nothing to stop you from creating your own versions of these presets in earlier versions. And if you feel like this is too much like hard work, then you always have the S-Whiplash transition available to you, where you get a similar effect, but not quite all the same manual controls as you have here, but it is a bit faster. If we take a look at our finished timeline, you can see how flexible this type of push or zoom movement actually is. And all of those are contained within that new little preset bundle. Now before we leave, I think one of the things that's underrated is the importance of sound effects. An interesting transition can be made even more interesting with the aid of just a very small sound effect, just a sound cue, again to help your brain move its way between the two clips. I've got a couple of sound effects here. I've got a little swirly whoosh, and I've got a little bassy whoosh as well. Whoosh. So let's see what the effect of having these on our edit actually is. I'm going to add my first transition, which is the bassy whoosh. Let's play that back. That sort of fits in okay there. Let's move it out of the way and see if the swirly whoosh is going to be any better. Now, when it comes to the transitions, what I want to do is time the start of this big whoosh to where the movement actually begins to happen. So which is actually round about here where I've coincidentally put the clip. That's a bit more of a subtle effect. And I think that works for this edit. Let's shorten it up. Add a tiny little crossfade in there just to make sure we're not cutting it off at the end. I don't think we are, but just to make sure. I've got a whiplash effect in here. That's working quite nicely just as it is. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And I'll just do a 6-frame fade just to take out the tails there. Now I don't have any more transitions in my bin at the moment, so I'm going to show you a creative way of recycling these effects so we can use them across our entire edit without it seeming like we've got the same effect again and again and again. Because let's just see what happens if we do that. I'm going to alt click on my clip and just drag it over so that I make a duplicate. And let's bring this on over. Another thing I like to do at this point is just turn off snapping, because that allows us to really line up the sound effect where I need it. Let's play that back. And that's cool, but we've just heard that whoom. And if you play that back enough and you've used the same, couple of sound effects enough, the ear will get used to that and it will go, okay, that's a bit boring. And with Resolve, it's really easy to do a couple of things here. First one is to change the clip pitch. So if I take this down -6 semitones, -5 semitones, there we go. We get a deeper whoom. So we've got much nicer. Okay, here we've got a really fast cut that's actually only using the blur motion curves on the outgoing clip. So I want something that's nice and fast. I'm going to use my bassy whoosh one more time. So let's just bring this over, line it up. So alt drag one more time, and I will change the clip speed. Make this a bit faster, change the speed to 150%, hit change. And maybe even bring the pitch up a little bit. There we go. Much better and much more in keeping with what the movement's doing. And I can build that along the entire timeline. And we end up with a timeline that looks a little bit like this. There's one other thing I've changed on a couple of these. If we have a look at this transition here, what I've done is used a clip equalizer as well and used a high pass filter just to chop off all of the bass frequencies. So we're left with something a little bit more whiplashy. And on the opposite side of that, in this transition, I've used a low pass filter to chop off all the higher frequencies, so we end up with something a little bit like this. So the before, we get some more reverb, and there, those high frequencies are gone. And all of this is really easy to do. It's clip pitch, clip equalizer, and clip speed. And maybe even just adjusting up the volume a little bit as well. Now if we play back our timeline now, we're just enhancing that feeling of moving between these different spaces, depending on what type of effect we've used. And in the same package with the presets, I've also included these two sound effects for you as well. And you can use these royalty free in any production you want. And when we bring in our music, we're going to have to, maybe mix the transitions in a little bit differently, but we'll end up with something a little bit like this. So in this tutorial, we've looked at different ways of bringing in those transitions. In the beginning, we looked at the boring push, followed up by the not so boring whiplash, before we came in and used blur motion curves to really manually mix in our own custom bespoke transition. And we also looked at how we could save time with these by saving them out as presets as well. And finally, we came to the importance of sound when it comes to making our transitions. Even if something just little, like a little whoosh or a swirl or just a little air blast, something like that, something that just helps you move between these two different shots, that can really help to add to the dynamism of the piece. So I hope this has given you a bit of inspiration about how you can begin to think about dynamic ways of using transitions in your own projects. And to help you along, remember, down in the description, there's a link to all the presets that I've used in this particular project, plus a couple more, plus these little sound effects that you can customize up as you want to. If you like this video and you want to see more, then leave a like and a comment below. And if you have ideas for something else you want to see in the future, then again, just let me know in the comments. If you want to learn more about Sapphire, then click the link to go to borisfx.com, where you can find all the latest news and training for all the Boris FX products.